Low doing.
And Mike, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay.
Kind of low though.
I'm low. My volume is low.
It sounded low. Yeah.
How's that? That's better?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. It's 12:12. Let's go ahead and start. Let me make sure I can see the chat window. All right, everything looks good on my end. Okay, welcome everyone to the second installment of the review and study session series. We'll be picking up with the of class one of the 21 Lessons of Metaphysics, the foundation of mystic and yogic teachings. let's open up with the prayer for spiritual workers, and then we'll go into announcements and today's session. So, prayer for spiritual workers. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their limitations, would smite me. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their weakness, would not heed me. Almighty God, I bless all those who, because of their ignorance, would defile you through me. And I ask, Almighty God, O wondrous power, that your strength may be given to me now, so that I might be fortified by this, so that I might go forward bravely into the world, and despite reception, send forth my love of thee throughout all races of man. Almighty God, give me the power and strength to rise above my karmic weakness, the deficiencies in the pattern of my evolution, so that I might evolve and become stronger, I, and even stronger, in thy everlasting light. O God, thy will be done. All right, and once again, welcome everyone to the first class in the second installment of the review and study series. And in this installment, we'll be looking at the lecture series, the 21 Lessons of Metaphysics, the Foundation of Mystic and Yogic Teachings. And you can find that series on our YouTube channel. I'm going to pull it up really quickly. And if you go to playlists, right? So here's our YouTube channel. If you go to playlists and then scroll down a bit, you will see on my screen it's listed here, 21 lessons. You click on view full playlist, and this is these 21 lessons, this series given by Mr. Nehemiah Davis in 2013, covers the foundational teachings with mystic and yogic science. If you are on our email list or are on Meetup, then you will see an announcement go out. And in that announcement, I specifically list the classes that we will cover. When you access this playlist, some of these classes you will not be able to see because they're on private. I think it's 5, 6, and another one. But the ones that you're able to see, the ones that are publicly available, they are on uh, listed in the announcement, and those are the classes that we will cover the transcripts of. So for making transcripts for class 1, 2, and 4, and I believe um, 8 and others, and we'll read through those transcripts, and we'll also look at the handouts and diagrams, illustrations that Mr. Davis used in these classes. So you'll notice in class 1, he'll give out a kind of a packet, a write-up with that summarizes a lot of the information as a write-up as well. That includes a summary of the information that he's covered in that class, as well as an itinerary, an agenda of everything that will be covered throughout the 21 lessons series. That original handout is in paper. It's somewhere in my files. I'll have to go back and dig it up and then scan it. And then once I do that, I'll upload it to the shared folder. So if you're joining us on YouTube, you'll see a link at the bottom of the description. It'll take you to the shared folder, or if you go to the announcement, the email announcement, the meetup announcement, it's also there. A link take to the shared folder. I'll scan that document and upload it. And you'll have that same handout that was given to us at this class 11 years ago. made available to you also. But I'll also include some updates since then. And I'll also throw in some assigned reading. So what am I talking about? Let me hop over to the transcript really quickly so I can what I'm talking about. So for this, as a review of the 21 Lessons series, and as I'm going through it and working out the transcript and collecting all the material together, um, there will be several assigned readings for all of you to study on your own. And those assigned readings will pertain specifically to what we'll cover in the sessions as you're reviewing the classes. So I don't expect us to go through all of the class one transcript in one seating. As you kind of can see here, um, this transcript alone is already at 30 pages. Now, this is the entire transcript for all of class one, and just the transcript itself is at 30 pages. And I'm still going through this and cleaning it up and polishing it and making sure that it is easy to follow for those who want to download and follow the transcript as well. So as I'm working through this, as I'm cleaning it up, I'm reminded or pointed to other sources, and I want to include those sources as we work through these study sessions. Because remember, we're reviewing these previous lectures, we're also studying them, and we're treating them as a class in and of themselves. So the source material is the 21 is the lecture series. So this in this particular case is the 21 Lessons of Metaphysics. But we will also have additional material that we can cover in the side readings that will help you to understand these concepts that are covered in the lecture series. So for now, the assigned readings for class one that I want to when they have a chance to pick up is the first one is the second text authored by Mr. Nehemiah Davis. It is the miracle kit behind the power of prayer, the mystic knowledge of manipulating the subtle and cosmic energies of prana through the prayer techniques. Um, I read the entire book in sort of audiobook style in a playlist on YouTube. And so you can go back and look at that if you wish, or even better, you pick up a copy of the text. But for specifically in class one, the two main um, subjects that Mr. Davis covers is spirit and soul. And so if you look in the Miracle Kit Behind the Power of Prayer, chapter 5 is about understanding the subtle makeup of man used in mystic prayer. And in that chapter, Mr. Davis introduces spirit, soul, and the chakra system and so forth. The And so I decided to assign that as reading, including the book, The 14 Lessons in Yoga Philosophy or to Occultism, which I'll actually read some excerpts from today before we jump into our study of the transcript. Specifically in the 14 lessons, here's pages 8 and 9, which is the Constitution of Man, pages 42 to 43, the spiritual principles, and pages 50 to 52, spirit, which I'll read those today, but the book is available for lessons on our website, and you can access that here. Let me jump over to. So if you go to our website, mysticknowledge.org, ebook library -1, follow that link, you'll see Yogi Ramacharaka right at the top. Well, and it is the second book here, The 14 Lessons in Yoga Philosophy. You can click it, download it and for free, read it for free. The entire text is a signed reading for the 14 lessons or accompaniment reading 14 lessons because what is covered in 14 lessons is expanded upon in the 21 lessons series, as well as other subject material. But as we get to those classes in the transcript review, I'll also include additional sections as well as books as a side reading to help us follow along, understand the material. I decided to assign these because spirit is a very complicated subject. So they complicated for us to understand, and there's a lot of confusion around the subject material. You'll see that come out in the in the class as you review that first class of the 21 lessons. You'll tell by the nature of the questions that are asked and um, the way that Mr. Davis responds to those questions is that there is a lot of confusion and difficulty understanding this concept of spirit. And Mr. Davis takes great care in trying to um, clear away that confusion and bring forth this subject of spirit. And one of the key points that I wanted to highlight before we start um, is Mr. Davis gives us a way to approach spirit, a way to think about spirit. A question was asked in in that first class is how should we look at spirit? How should we attempt to understand it? And I'm going to jump to that first because I want to open up this discussion on spirit with that answer, and then we will move into looking at the 21 lessons and sorry the 14 lessons in their descriptions of spirit, and then we'll look at the actual excerpts from the handout that was given when this lecture series was given to everyone in its descriptions of spirit and a bit of soul to give us a background and a foundation to help us better understand the material that's covered in this class. And as we go through the transcript, I don't expect us to cover more than the first 15 minutes of transcript today, but um, that'll be plenty for us to cover in this first session. So I anticipate us taking about several sessions just on spirit and soul alone, because it is that important for us to have a solid understanding of spirit, of the absolute, spirit, and soul before we move into um, the other aspects of the mystic constitution, as well as those 21 foundational lessons. So before that, let me go back and finish up our announcements. As mentioned earlier, we are going to cover the 21 lessons. And I, the way that looks right now, although I said I wanted to do 2 sessions per video, it'll probably be much more than that. Not much more. I'll limit it to a maximum of 3 sessions per video. And the reason for that is there's so much covered in each class that to do a proper study of it, um, we would have to go pretty much line by line through the transcript and um, both fielding questions and in the comments that all of you have, additional questions that come up as I've been reviewing the material, you know, 10, 11, 12, 15 years later, and then additional material that's been produced or published since then to help us understand the concepts. So, for example, we have the 2 books that are already published from Mr. Davis, The Ancient Language of the Soul and The Miracle Kit of Prayer, expands upon a lot of the information that Mr. Davis has given in lectures in the past. You know, for various reasons, you know, maybe Mr. Davis was not able to go as deep into a subject material at that time because of the audience who was there, you know, didn't allow him to go further into the subject material that a book would allow him to go into. So those 2 books are great resources to help us understanding these foundational lessons, as well as expanding on those foundational lessons and giving us additional material to study and work with. But then there's a third text that Mr. Davis is working on that is called the Mystic Constitution of Man text, which will expand on this information even further. So there's no set release date for that book right now, currently. but I may pull information from that book to help us understand these concepts. So, for example, chapters 2, 3, and 4 of the Mystic Constitution book deal with spirit, chapter 2, and then 3 and 4 deal with spirit and soul. Entire chapters are dedicated to this, and those would have been um, those are great additions in helping us to understand these concepts. So I'll probably take extracts from those chapters, but you have to be a bit forgiving with that because those chapters have not been fully edited by us yet. They're still very rough drafts. And so I'll only take snippets and then I'll edit those snippets to help us expand on these concepts as we work through these 21 lessons. Because again, that entire book is dedicated to the Mystic Constitution, and the Mystic Constitution um, is part 1 and 2 of the foundation, of the Mystic and Yogic teachings, the 21 Lessons on Metaphysics series. After we finish that, I plan to go into the Serpent Power, but that's probably won't be until next year. But I also plan to separate the RSS series into um, something else, and so that we have our traditional lectures resuming on Sundays, which is our traditional format for these classes. For the South Florida group of the Atheist Society, we're continuing our weekly 12 Blessings services every week, and we also continue our commemoration services. For the study and review of the teachings of Dr. Sri Yogi Riji, I'm going to move that to the RSS and continue that on. Um, um, with that, I was thinking of doing it through the Florida group, but as I was working through putting together the transcript for the 21 lessons, it just seemed to fit better with the RSS. And then we'll include other materials as well, including Yogi Matraka, William Alker Hackerson, same person, Sir Arthur Avalon, so on and so on and so forth, Madame Blavatsky, and so on. So the RSS will continue as a as it started, as a combination of readings. If no explicit lecture is available, either given by Dr. George King or some other uh, uh, teachers that we endorse in the International Mystic Knowledge Center, then we'll go straight to the source material. So, for example, um, the Yogi Amatraka series, well, I'm going to go back to that. I started reading the 14 lessons in a playlist. You can go back and look at that. I didn't finish reading the entire 14 lessons because I wanted to change the format of how that's done. But we'll work our way through the Yogi Ramatraka teachings, and then we'll work our way through Dr. Sri Yogi Riji George King teachings. We'll work our way through um, Sir Arthur Avalon, um, uh, Mabel Collins, Annie Besant, and Bada Lasky, and so on and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's all the announcements I have. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Nehemiah, before we jump in?
No, if you need the notes, I could probably search my hard drive for those. What you say it was 2013?
Yeah, 13. Yeah, 2013, 2014. Because I have. Let me jump to it really quick. This is what I was able to find. Um, and this was the first draft of the 21 lessons um, handout. And I know what you gave us out to class was much more polished and finished. But this is the only one I had. 'Cause I remember you gave me a copy of your hard drive, which had everything from 2013, and so I found this one in that folder that you shared with me. And so I was going to read from this today before we jump into the transcript. But
Mm.
this, like, this is a first draft, so it doesn't. There's parts of here in the class. These sections were filled out, and then it goes into lesson 3, the soul of man, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I could probably find that for you. Tell me ahead of time, I can look in mine. Because I keep all of those, I keep everything, you know how I do.
Yeah, you have everything saved on
I have
a couple of drives. Yeah.
dated and everything.
Yeah, this we're gonna read through this today. I want, even though it's covered in the class, I want to read through it first, and then we'll go into the transcript and study um, what was stated there, and we also include a couple of illustrations, trying to expand on the concepts. All right, so let me stop share. So before that, let me hop over to the chat and see if there are any questions. Ah, welcome, Tom. Thank you for your question. Can you tell me something about predetermining our actions? And when I predetermine my actions, some unconscious works come and disturb me, and I cannot go as planned. How do I manage it?
What do you mean by if you predetermine your actions, then you keep moving. If you have a task to do, concentration is staying on task. Predetermining your actions is part of your concentrative, contemplative techniques. So if you predetermine your actions, you don't allow things to disrupt your forward movement or progress. And in predetermining your actions, you make room for any obstructions. You have a you have a method of setting them aside or moving them aside in order to finish the mission that you're doing. You know, so look at it like this. If you have a goal, that goal, in order to reach that goal, you may have 3 objectives. And each one of those 3 objectives may have 10 action steps to complete objective 1, 10 action steps to complete objective 2, and 10 action steps to complete objective 3, and then the goal is achieved. So that's predetermining your actions. So if you want to accomplish your goal, you also, when completing those actions, you note what obstacles you might meet, and you have a plan of action to deal with those obstacles. The only reason why a car turns on and allow you to move from point A to point B is because all the actions in the operations of that car have been predetermined to act and react in a certain manner. And that's intelligence. So we have to, in predetermining your actions, what it does, it helps you to move to an intelligent mode of operation instead of this spontaneous, emotional mode that most people they just move around. They let the wind take them every which way they go. Instead of thinking about where they need to go, instead of predetermining their actions. It brings you in sync with your higher self by predetermining your actions, because your higher self predetermined all your actions. You know, so what you're doing is coming in alignment with your higher self. So that's how you have to look at it. It's just a technique to get you where you need to go. You know, and every single thing that you look at, know that the actions of that thing, in order to be in manifestation, someone had to predetermine the actions of that. Even the chair that you're sitting in, someone needed to lay out the design, determine how much weight it can handle over a period of time, the life expectancy of that material, the design of that material, how comfortable it would be, every little single thing. So that's predetermining your actions. So it's a level of intelligence that you begin to operate on. So look at it like that. So don't allow things to creep into your mind. You know, and when you can predetermine your actions and go where you need to go, then it gives you the ability over your lower self. And just so you understand, when you get into the mystic things, you'll realize how important this is. And that's why you hear me talk about it. If you develop the ability to astral project, the first thing you'll notice that when you get into the astral body, that you have very little control over the astral body, because the astral body, in the basic astral body, is an emotional body. It responds to emotions. And when you get out into the astral body, you smell something, you feel something, you sense something, and all of a sudden, within seconds, you are where that thing is. Because the astral body is emotional, it works on instinct. So in order for you to control the astral body, you must predetermine, you must be able to direct the astral body to not respond to those sensations and move in the direction that you want it to move in. So if you align your 10 senses in the physical body, you begin to align your 10 senses in the astral body. And you teach it to respond to the conscious and the advanced conscious mind and the superconscious mind or higher self of yourself that deal with preserving energy, predetermining your actions, and being able to move freely wherever you want to go in order to gain experience and intelligence. So I hope that helped you to understand a little bit more about pre-developing your actions.
Okay. Anima, could you give that concentration practice again? I know Dr. George King gives it too, and you gave it as well. Where you, if the mind wanders, you let it run for a bit, and until it tires itself out, and then you bring it back to whatever it is you're focused on. I think it was a practice that we're given to help us concentrate during our like a mantra or something else.
Yeah, that's just that is part of that's a technique to deal with obstacles. So it's just doing exactly what I just said to do, in a sense where you, if you want to predetermine your actions, and you know that your mind wanders or whatever, you have a plan of action to make sure to deal with that when that happened. And one of the techniques Dr. George King gave us is that if you're trying to concentrate and a grasshopping thought come in your mind, as they normally do, don't try to fight the grasshopping thought. You have a plan of action for it. You allow the mind to go where the grasshopping thought is taking you, and you allow it to exhaust itself in going there. Because why is it taking you there? What's the purpose of this? This is not what I want to do. See where all these thoughts are coming from. And usually it's residue inside your aura, something that you left undone. So once you get the answer, then you can drop it and you can go back to what you're doing. But what happened, the conscious mind, the basic part, the basic mind, it get exhausted when you're trying to insert logic and reasoning and understanding into it. Because at the end of the day, and that's why we have all these different visualization practices to cleanse the aura and techniques of chanting the mantra in order to purify the aura, so that when you go to sit down, you don't have these grasshopping thoughts. You don't have as much. You'll have some, but not as much. When you can clear your mind, and then your basic mind will begin to know that it's only going to exhaust itself when it introduces these things to you when you try to concentrate, because they're going to understand that you are in control. So the technique is like Dr. King said, it's just like when you're fishing. Put the bait in the water, let the fish grab the bait and go out as far as it can, and then when it get exhausted, it stops to consume the bait, and that's when you pull it back in. And that's what you do to grasshopper thoughts. And what I was saying earlier is that it's just a technique to deal with the obstacles that's on your pathway to gaining a concentration and contemplation. Predetermining all your actions is a concentrative, contemplative technique. I hope that answered the question.
Okay. Again, I wonder if you have any questions or comments, feel free to post them in the chat, and I will periodically glance over the chat and pose those questions. All right, so let's start with, okay, so I wanted to read just this excerpt from the transcript to give us the proper approach in helping us to understand spirit, and then we'll go into the excerpts from the 14 lessons, and then we'll take another excerpt from the actual part of the handout that was given, and then we'll come back to the transcript. Oh, sorry, you guys can't see it. So the question was, for understanding of this, how should we look at spirit? And the answer says you must look at it as spirit. You must look at spirit as the potential of all things. It is the power of all things. It is the unlimited power of all things. In other words, it is the background of all things. It's just like scientists realize that in our environment we have a background activity. What is this background activity? When they bring the Geiger counter out, what are they looking for? For radiation. Because all living things radiates. And it has this background radiation that will define the level of that manifested thing, whether it's a rock, whether it's plant life, animal life, or human life. It will dictate the level of that life. Um, but it is not the radiation itself. It's the play against the radiation. So you can't look at it in manifestation. We have to look at it outside of manifestation. And he expands on that when he says outside of manifestation, it means outside the invisible physical worlds and the visible physical worlds. All right, so that's the approach that we should take when we are talking about spirit to help us understand that. And he visually, Mr. Davis expands on this concept in a couple of handouts. This handout that I'm showing here is entitled "The Creative Source of the Constitution of Man," and it was not included at the time when the lecture was given, but it helps to understand this, visually understand or represent this concept of the absolute spirit being that background radiation. So what's illustrated here, you have the absolute and its endless potential of all things. It is that background in which everything radiates or vibrates upon. One example Mr. Davis gave in a subsequent class to help us understand this concept further. If you go back in the videos and you know that he writes and illustrates upon a whiteboard, and he made the illustration of the whiteboard represents that endless potential. But when he goes to the board and he writes something or draws something, that illustration, that illusion is projected against the whiteboard, and it is manifested against the unmanifestation, the unmanifested potential. And this is similar. This illustration here helps us understand it as well and goes a bit further. So against the ends potential of the absolute, we have the invisible creative part of the universe, the semi-invisible part of the universe, and the visible part of the universe. And this is referring to our perspective. What is semi-visible and visible to us could be is visible even more so to more advanced beings on more advanced planets. But from the human perspective, um, this is what's referred to. And then again here, it's shown to further explain this illustration, but in another visible way. You have the invisible part, which would represent the endless potential. And upon that, you have the semi-invisible, which would be soul, because a part of soul is unmanifested and part of soul is manifested. Spirit itself is unmanifested. It is it's synonymous with absolute. And then you have the visible part, which is the manifested universe. And against that backwork, within a framework of law, which he goes into in the lecture, within that framework of law of karma, which governs all actions, we have, um, the supreme laws of creation, um, galaxies, the galactic lords, essential suns, solar logos, the planets, the moons, and all the way down into the vibrational realm. So he used radiation in the lecture, but you can also use the term vibration. But to help us understand at that time, and to correlate it between the example of using a Geiger counter to measure the background radiation um, that we use here on Earth. You can also use vibration, and from that we have the further levels of creation, the Buddha, Mahabhutas, all the way down to the mineral, plant, fish life, etc. So throughout this review of the transcript, I'll be going back and forth with illustrations that I found that can help to understand this concepts, and as well as present it in a way that for some of us maybe uh, with different learning styles to try and facilitate everyone and going forward. This handout, I think, is in the shared folder. But if you go through the shared folder and you don't see it, send me an email and I'll put it up there. But today we're going to cover, oops, sorry, it's not working. Spirit. So we'll move back and forth between this diagram. This is the spirit diagram, the mystical constitution of man. This should be in our share folder as well. And this illustrates the information both in the chapter 5 of the Milk of Prayer and presented in the lecture. So let's go to the 14 lessons. And in the 14 lessons, we're just going to read a couple of excerpts and then we'll move. I was originally planning on reading chapter 5 or part of chapter 5 in the book, but I'll leave that for the book I'm talking about is this one, The Miracle Kit Behind the Power of Prayer. Mystic knowledge for manipulating the subtle cosmic energies of prana through prayer techniques, and specifically talking about referring to chapter 5. And chapter 5, understanding the subtle makeup of man used in mystic prayer. And in chapter 5, it talks about the spirit of man, the divine spark of God, and the soul of man, the manifested consciousness of spirit. And it goes into the chakra system, the nadi system, consciousness, and description on man's mind, as well as the pranic flows within the body. So I'll leave that for all of you to go back and read. The entire text is great, but for the next couple of sessions, as we look at spirit and soul, chapter 5 should suffice. All right. So let's look at the 14 lessons in yogi philosophy and Oriental occultism, which is also assigned reading. And we'll start on pages 8 and 9, which is the Constitution of Man. One second. Put that up for you guys to see. So throughout the 21 lessons, we will talk about the mystic constitution of man. And actually, for those of you who've been with us for quite some time, you know that the teaching methodology or the teachings of the International Mystic Knowledge Center are focused around the mystic constitution of man. But many of the ancient teachings, in fact, focus on the mystic constitution of man and expand from that. Now, in this text, I'm just scroll down a bit. Yogi Ramatraka refers to the 7 principles, which in sense is mystic constitution or the anatomy of the mystic constitution. In this text, Yogi Ramatraka starts with the physical body and then moves up through the constitution, astral, pranic body, as referred to here, prana, vital force, instinctive mind, intellectual mind, spiritual mind, spirit. Um, but in most um, occult treatises on the mystic constitution, including the way that Mr. Davis structures our teachings in Metaphysics now in the IMKC, the it starts from the macro and works its way down to the micro. So it starts with the absolute spirit, soul, involution. The soul goes produces the involutional process and makes its way down to um, the the galaxy, uh, our solar system, the planets, the sun, the planets, and then down to the terrestrial level, down to the human level. Um, Neither approach is um, wrong, but I think, and Nehemiah can comment this as well, that the approaching it from going from the spirit and following that involutionary process down to the terrestrial level, to the human level, um, better helps us to understand these concepts, wrap our mind around the concepts. And then when we think about 'cause involution, I think is a bit harder to understand than the evolutionary process, because we are all on that evolutionary process, and we kind of have a more uh, a deeper understanding where we currently are of the evolutionary process, going um, up to Shumna, going up to and returning to God. But when we talk about evolution, uh, many questions and confusion comes up. Specifically, the greatest question, biggest question of all, as to why. And that question is not really answered. Why did God see fit to involve itself in the first place? Um, no one really knows the answer, and then those who do know that answer don't haven't really, at least to my knowledge, really given that answer. But as we're studying this, if we understand that involutionary process of moving down from spirit to our gross physical existence, it then gives us a roadmap of where we're going. Well, first of all, it tells us what we truly are, which is spirit. Everything else, as Mr. Davis talks about in the lecture, um, is not real, is illusion. But we're making our way through the illusion to get back to reality, get back um, to spirit, but as conscious gods. We'll talk about that um, as we get into uh, lecture. To start off, we're on page 8, I said, and we'll look at the constitution of men. Anything you want to add, Nehemiah, before I go in?
That's correct. I had a student ask me, well, wouldn't it be better to start with the physical body and go up? But you don't know where the physical body came from and what the purpose. We could talk about the purpose of the physical body only because we know what spirit, soul, auric body, uh, 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 the mind, the etheric body, the astral body, the pranas. Then we have an understanding of the physical body and why it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to teach the higher principles in order to tame the lower principles, in order to be able to tame the lower principles.
Okay. So first extract from the 14 lessons, the constitution of man. Man is a far more complete being than is generally imagined. He has not only a body and a soul, but he is a spirit possessing a soul, which soul has several vehicles for expression. These several vehicles being of different degrees of density, the body being the lowest form of expression, and body being the physical body. These different vehicles manifest upon different planes, such as the physical plane or the astral plane, etc., all of which will be explained as we proceed, and as well in subsequent classes. In the 21 lessons, Nehemiah gives, Davis gives a treatise on the realms, or mentioned here as the planes of existence. The real self is pure spirit, a spark of the divine fire. This spirit is encased within numerous sheaths, which present its full expression. As man advances in development, his consciousness passes from the lower planes to the higher, and he becomes more and more aware of his higher nature. The spirit contains within it all potentialities, and as man progresses, he unfolds new powers, new qualities into the light. The yogi philosophy teaches that man is composed of seven principles, is a sevenfold creature. The best way to think of man is to realize that the spirit is the real self, and that the lower principles are but confining sheaths. And in the lecture, um, Maya is brought up, and Nehemiah expands upon what Maya is, and its role in these, and what's mentioned here, confining sheaths, but even on the macro level of the universe as a whole. Man may manifest upon several planes, that is, the highly developed man, as the majority of men in this age can manifest only upon the lower planes, the higher planes not having as yet been reached by them, although every man, no matter how undeveloped, possesses the seven principles potentially. Excuse me. The first five planes have been attained by many, the sixth by a few, the seventh practically none of this race at this time. The seven principles of man, as known to the yogi philosophy, are herein stated, English terms being substituted for Sanskrit words, as far as may be: spirit, spiritual mind, intellect, instinctive mind, prana or vital force, astral body, physical body. Now, as we work through the transcript, I will read the excerpts from each of these topics as they're covered in the 14 lessons. Um, the terminology used in the 14 lessons may not be a one for one in the 21 lessons, but the way that Mr. Davis describes it in the 21 lessons um, encompasses what's presented in the 14 lessons, but also expands upon it and gives deeper understanding and meaning. From when the 14 lessons was given until today, um, the teachings themselves have not changed, but the way in which they're presented for modern man to understand them has been adopted for our level of consciousness and evolution. All right. So next we'll look at the pages 42 through 43, which talks about the spiritual principle. Let me jump there really quick. So it's If you go to our mysticknowledge.org website and download the book, the page numbers in the transcript document I put together correspond to the pages in the PDF document, necessarily to the pages. Like here it says 39, but in the PDF it's 42. The spiritual principles. Okay, here we go. From here, we will now take up the subject of the sixth principle, spiritual mind, which will be more or less plain to those who have had glimmerings of consciousness from this plane of the soul, but which will be full of hard sayings and dark corners. To those who have not as yet reached this stage of unfoldment. The seventh principle, the spirit, however, is beyond the comprehension of any except the few enlightened and highly developed souls in and out of the body, who are as far above the ordinary man as the average enlightened man is above the bushman. We can but pass on to you enough to give you a general intellectual idea of what is meant by spirit. The consciousness of it is still far beyond the race in its present stage. It is well, however, to know of the existence of spirit, as it helps us to understand something of the spiritual mind, which is spirit's means of communication with the intellectual consciousness. The comprehension of spiritual mind, however, opens up such a wonderful world of thought that we are satisfied to leave the understanding of spirit until such a time as we grow into consciousness of it. And I think next I wanted to cover, I'll come back to spiritual mind when we talk about soul. But for now, and also in the transcript, we jump ahead again to pages 50 to 52, which talks about spirit. And that's here. Spirit. How shall we approach this subject, which even the most advanced minds in the flesh today can but faintly comprehend? How can the finite express or comprehend the infinite? Spirit, man's seventh principle, is the divine spark, our most precious inheritance from the divine power, a ray from the central sun, the real self. Words cannot express it. Our minds fail to grasp it. It is the soul of the soul. To understand it, we must understand God, for spirit is a drop from the spirit ocean, a grain of sand from the shores of the infinite, a particle of the sacred flame. Excuse me. It is that something within us which is the cause of our evolution through all the weary ages. It was the first to be, and yet it will be the last to appear in full consciousness. When man arrives at full consciousness of spirit, he will be so much higher than man that such a being is at present inconceivable to the intellect. Confined in many sheaths of matter, it has waited through the long and weary ages for even a faint recognition, and is content to wait for ages more until it is finally brought into consciousness. Man will ascend many steps of development, from man to archangel, before spirit will fully claim its own. The spirit is that within man which closest approaches the center, is nearest to God. It is only an occasional precious moment that we are aware of the existence of spirit within us. And in such moments, we are conscious of coming into the awful presence of the unknown. These moments may come when one is engaged in deep religious thought, while reading a poem bearing a precious message from soul to soul. In some hour of affliction, when all human aid has failed us, and when human words seem but mockery, in a moment when all seems lost, and when we feel the necessity to direct a word from a being higher, feel the necessity of a direct word from a being higher than ourselves. When these moments come, they leave with us a peace which never afterward entirely escapes us, and we are ever changed beings. We are ever after changed beings. In the moment of illumination or the dawn of spiritual consciousness, we also feel the real presence of the Spirit. In these moments, we become conscious of our relationship with and connection with the center of life. Through the medium of the Spirit, God reveals himself to man. We cannot dwell longer on this subject. It overpowers one, and mere words seem too weak for use in connection with it. Those who have felt the impulse of the spiritual mind have been made faintly conscious of the abiding sense of the Spirit, although they cannot grasp its full significance. And those who have not experienced these things would not understand us if we wrote volumes of our imperfect and undeveloped conceptions of the subject. So we will pass on, trusting that we have awakened in our minds at least a faint desire to be brought into a closer communion and contact with this, the highest part of self, self itself. The peace of the Spirit abide within you. Okay. So that was the 14 lessons, Introduction to Spirit. Now move on to move to that here. So here is the handout, or part of the handout that was given to us during the 21 lessons series. And this is the treatise of on spirit that Mr. Davis put together. Now I found several documents, on um, spirit that Mr. Davis had authored, and I took parts from each document and combined them into this one. So when I can scan or get the handout and I'll upload it to the shared folder, it'll look a little different from this one that I have here. Um, I may go once I get if I'm able to get the handout from Mr. Davis, I may go through that as well as the other um, documents, hand write-ups, and diagrams that were produced or given since the 20 Lessons series was given in 11, 12 years ago, and may include those additional items as addenda to the original handout. Well, all depends on um, if I have the time to do it. Let me see if there's any questions so far. Nope. And again, if you guys have any questions or comments, you can feel free to post them in the chat on YouTube. I'll look at them and pose them. Uh, Spirit is a difficult concept to grasp because, again, we are working from a position of limited consciousness within manifested, um, trying to understand the unmanifested. So it uh, does entail some confusion. So feel if you're confused, have questions, don't feel ashamed. Post them in the chat, and we'll try to answer those for you. And if we're not able to get to them today, or if you're just not comfortable asking a question publicly, you can send it to us via email, and we'll answer those questions also. Or you can contact one of us directly, and if we're able to, we'll answer the question as well. Let's see. Lesson 2, this is actually lesson 1 because it was the first class. Let me go up real quick. Yeah. Life of man as spirit, a divine spark of God. So we'll look here is an outline, information presented is a brief meaning of the divine spark of God. Spirit, no beginning and therefore no end. The spirit never breaks down or diminishes its connection to the whole. Spirit is the power of creation. Spirit, the resource of all life. Spirit, excuse me, is a true unmanifested witness of all life. That is the unmanifested part of man, the solution source and point of all consciousness and life, and spirit, the Shiva of life, creator and destroyer. Man is a far more complex being than is seen on the surface of most observers. Under the philosophy of most mystics and yogic teachings, they believe that man possesses the potential of great feats of psychic and mental abilities. The mystic believes that the man is spirit, a divine spark of God wrapped in various levels of subtle and gross materials that molds and conforms man to an involved state of being. The yogic philosophy teaches that man has many facets to his makeup. Man's true nature is spirit, a divine spark of God, and everything else is but a divine sheath of clothing to weather the pathway of any storms through life. Each divine sheath of clothing can be considered a state of being manifesting a specific level of consciousness that inhibits the inner light of the spirit. But each divine sheath of clothing or group of divine sheaths of clothing make up the level of consciousness, higher and lower aspects of man. So what is being referred to there? Let me zoom out here so you can see the whole page. So in those two paragraphs, what's being alluded to there is spirit, the true you, and then those sheaths, those divine sheaths, are the soul, and as you can see here, up here is the unmanifested existence. Spirit residing here in the unmanifested existence. All right, let me zoom in a bit more. And then you see soul here existing in both an unmanifested state and the manifested state. Then the soul takes on a body or sheath, which is the auric body. And the auric body, we know in, I'm getting ahead of ourselves because we're talking about spirit today and in the class 1, but the auric body being the body of the soul, it wears this that divine sheath to, as expressed in that paragraph, to weather the storms of the process of involution and evolution. Okay, so that's what's being referred to there. In other handouts, the um, the bodies are delineated, and I'll show that another time when we get to conversation on the auric bodies further in further class. A brief meaning of spirit as the divine spark of God. This subject is probably the most difficult one to approach for most students and to comprehend because of the limited scope of our awareness and the physical limitations of life. We live in a mortal, physical state of mind, not allowing us to truly comprehend the complexity of our true nature, the spirit, a divine spark of God, that dwells within and all around us and allows us to make our being through involution to evolution. What is this thing called spirit? This has been expressed and defined in many different ways by all walks of life. The yogi mystic believes that God is the absolute, the all in all, the life, and source behind all things. It is all things and even more than that. And Cosmic Master from Venus grabs it as God is all and all is God. Words cannot truly express or define the nature of this supreme power. Our feeble minds struggle to comprehend the greatest of the relationship to our divine source. Spirit is the name we give to that part of ourselves that never breaks the connection with the absolute. It is the real you, the only part of you that is not manifested or created. There is truly no real complete definition we can give to spirit because it defines the parameters of definition. Its true glory and magnificence cannot be captured in the imagination of man, in the speech, or even the written word of man. We can only attempt to give some brief limited meaning to it. With our state of limited consciousness, we select and assign names to the infinite source in order to begin to grasp the ancient knowledge and secrets of the creative universe. The spirit is the real you, the source of all power. It is described as that point or spark from the absolute. This spirit, as a divine spark of God, becomes the source of Bindu, or point of consciousness, where everything originates from. It is the compaction point of all things and all power. And we'll expand on Bindu later on. The spirit, no beginning and therefore no end. Spirit was never created. Therefore, it will never have an expiration date, or it has no end. Spirit is part of that endless static potential of the absolute that has no beginning or ending. It is the everlasting source of pure intelligence and power. Excuse me. Spirit is unmanifested and timeless because it exists outside the limits of time. In fact, spirit is the creator of time and the destroyer of time because spirit is the creator of soul. It became that force that ushers in this thing called time. Creation represents movement, and movement is the product of time, which describes manifestation. To go a little deeper into that, I invite you to listen to the lecture by Dr. George King on the seven dimensions of creation, where it was a master from Mars that gave that, right, Nehemiah? I think it was a master of Mars that gave seven dimensions of creation to um, Dr. George
No,
King.
it wasn't.
It wasn't?
No,
Okay.
it's Mars Sector 8,
Okay. Mars thing.
not Mars Sector 6.
Okay. Okay, the seven dimensions of creation, and then Dr. George King expands upon it in a lecture that he gives.
Yeah.
The spirit never breaks or diminishes connection to the whole. The spirit, as a divine spark of God that is still connected to the whole and unmanifested in our sense of the manifested world. The spirit never breaks its link with the absolute. It stands as the Shiva aspect to manifested life. It is the only I am you will know, and yet it is not the I am, because it is part of the whole that never separated from the absolute. It, the spirit, or I am, is the only God you will know, but it is not God because it is only a fraction of God. Yet the spirit is the only real you that you will ever know.
And the seven dimensions of creation kind of it gives the link. It describes the link to the whole.
Yes, 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 yes. That's true. And let me just, excuse me, pause
Go ahead
here.
and continue because it helps people too.
Yeah. But I think you have a lecture on that, the seven dimensions of creation as well. Spirit is the I am, the real self or divine spark of God. It is the all in all. Sorry, I should do this later. The all in all, the absolute or God of you that never manifested, but always is connected to that source. Therefore, spirit is not in matter, but spirit is the static, endless potential of everything. This is the statement behind the answer given to Moses from God through the burning bush when Moses asked, "Who should I say sent me?" And God said, "Tell them that I am sent you." The soul is the I aspect of you that is manifested from spirit. The soul is the body of the spirit that is manifested in etheric matter. The mental manifestation of creation is the expression of consciousness for the soul to gain experience through. The physical manifestation of creation is the vehicles of expression for the soul to gain experience through. All right, so think back to that illustration where we had the invisible, semi-invisible, and visible um, aspects of creation. The subject of spirit is generally misunderstood mainly because to truly understand it, you have to understand it in a framework of abstract thinking. Let me frame this subject in the following paragraphs, although it really could take a book to give it proper respect. The spirit of man represents the God of man, which is the I am of man. Spirit is unmanifested. Spirit is infinite, and spirit never had a beginning and never will have an end. Therefore, spirit is untouchable but omnipresent. Spirit is invisible, yet it is visible everywhere. Spirit is the background canvas for all creation, yet it is not manifested. Spirit is the all in all. It is the absolute, the supreme being of all creation, yet it is spirit. Therefore, spirit is a collective consciousness of all life, but spirit is even above consciousness. Excuse me. Consciousness defines a state of limitation, and spirit is above limitation because spirit, is that static, everlasting, endless potential that creation pulls on to manifest itself as limited consciousness in all shapes and form. Right? Spirit, the power of creation. Before that, a question came to mind. Um, Wait, let me read the chat. Maybe there's a question here as well about it as well. All right, Tom, I see your question and I will pose it. Well, here, since we're moving on to the section up, I'll pose it here in a second. So consciousness, it's a question, Nehemiah. Consciousness defines a state of limitation, and spirit is above limitation. The spirit is above consciousness. Then, first of all, what does it mean to be a conscious God, and how can we return to spirit, to the absolute, as a conscious God?
The spirit is above consciousness or mind. The soul is above consciousness and mind too. Spirit and soul molds the energy of mind and bring about consciousness. You understand?
Yes, yes.
So in a state of spirit or in a state of mind, and in a state of spirit or a state of soul, you have total awareness. Soul have a limited total awareness, but only through spirit, because soul is manifested only to be absorbed back into the spirit as a soul. Now, the energy that we manipulate comes from the absolute. In ancient texts, they say Shiva, and Shakti comes from Shiva. Then you have the principles of Shakti, but the spirit and the soul are the manipulators of the Shakti, of all the different modifications of Shakti, and they mold and shape Shakti into manifestation. So when you say you go back as conscious gods, you go back in pure awareness of the whole through spirit, because everything is absorbed back into spirit. And you see, life is like that too, because the material we use on this Mother Earth comes from the Mother Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mother Earth pulls on this material from the solar system, galaxy, and universe. But when all life leave Mother Earth, the material that we use is absorbed back into the Mother Earth. And we leave with our auric bodies, which came from the soul. You understand?
Yes.
And the same thing in the solar system. Everything in the solar system, everything in the solar system came from the sun. But the sun pulled this from the galaxy and the universe. But when this solar system began to move back into the absolute, everything, all the planets, all the life forms that use the material of the planets are absorbed back into the sun. And scientists have decoded that and said that everything is solidified light. They proved the ancient teachings correct.
Mm-hmm.
So if everything is solidified light of the sun is the God of this solar system. The same way the spirit is the God of us. But so that we don't confuse people, we say that I am.
Mm-hmm.
But the spirit is a part of the whole. Just the way the sun is a part of the whole of the universe and absolute. Just the way we are the part of the whole of the earth too. We could say that because all the elements on this earth we can find in our body. We can find traces of it in our body, and scientists have discovered that too. If they dissect the body, they will find traces of all different type of minerals that came from the earth.
This is part of the frustration of language. This consciousness there, that term doesn't adequately
No,
convey.
it's consciousness on that level because
Yeah.
you have because in the ancient teachings and when you get into the advanced teachings of Yoga Ramataraka and other teachings that try to describe this, they would say even the Hare Krishnas, they'll say that God took a part of his consciousness and made the universe.
Right.
But God,
God doesn't have
but
God's above consciousness. So
yeah,
how could it?
is above consciousness. But they will also say that God is above consciousness. So in order to explain to us, they use words that relate to us.
Mm-hmm.
So
But those words, that language, the language itself
yeah,
is so limiting. So it.
yeah, but they'll come back like that's why you see absolute. Absolute means God because everything is because God is absolute. So but then they'll say that God releases that God is Shiva and Shiva is absolute because Shiva, but because at that point Shiva is an action within the absolute. In other words, so
Mm.
Shiva is the background force and energy of everything, and it is the creator and the destroyer. So, in other words, Shiva releases Shakti.
Mm-hmm.
Shakti is used to create, but
Mm-hmm.
Shiva also pulls Shakti back in. So, Shiva is the destroyer, is the creator and the destroyer. But you cannot have consciousness without having Shiva, Shakti, Shiva, Nata, or Shakti.
Mm-hmm.
And then you cannot have the vehicle of consciousness if you don't have spirit and soul. It all relates.
Okay. Thank you. I have a question here by Tom asks, how to wait, let me read the question first. How just with the immense capacity of ourselves, we sometimes do things we know we should not do, and it's really unconscious. It's a really unconscious state. Okay, how to destroy the ignorance capacity um, within ourselves. It says we sometimes do things we know we should not do, and it's a really unconscious state. Any comments on it?
I thought I answered that earlier.
Yeah, you did talk about that earlier.
So you create a momentum within yourself to always gain control over your actions and always seek intelligence or to know. Ignorance exists because of lack of knowledge. Ignorance can only rise to the top of your consciousness because of lack of knowledge. If you create a pathway to gain knowledge or information uh, at will, then when you confront it with ignorance, the momentum of your own personality and attitude will be to seek understanding. So that kills out ignorance because you'll always be seeking knowledge or understanding, either understanding, knowledge, or wisdom in whatever you confront and whatever you are confronted with. You know, if you create that attitude and that personality within yourself, and that is an attitude and personality of intelligence. So that's part of the aspect of Raja Yoga, which is predetermining your action. Predetermining your action is a technique to gain enlightenment. It's an intelligence technique. I hope that answers your question. Sometimes it's hard to connect the dots, but you got to really think about what's being presented before you.
I don't know if you're familiar with the teachings of the Society of Dr. George King. Dr. George King has a lecture um, entitled "Your Basic Self, Your Worst Enemy." You can take a look at that one, where he talks about the basic self, its workings, and how it can sabotage your spiritual development. And there's another lecture he gives on a transmission. Um, the transmission entitled is From Free Will to Freedom, uh, which is a transmission given um, by both Mao 66 and the Master Aetherius. And Dr. King gives a lecture on it. Both lectures can be found on Aetherius Cloud. I don't know if I don't see it here. I'm looking at it. I don't see if the lecture and the transmission are separated. It looks like they have it combined together in one recording, but you can jump onto the cloud and take a listen to those if you're subscribed or uh, listen to those lectures. So a couple of comments here. Oh, sorry, let me take a look back. Where are we? James writes, the Creator willed there to be light, and light came to be. That's why God in the Hebrew Genesis is plural. The absolute God expressed itself through the lesser gods and the sun, which created the solar system. Yes, we refer to the many expressions or aspects of God collectively as God. But for example, the Mother Earth, the highest aspect of God closest to us, um, the mighty sun, an aspect of God, the galaxy, an aspect of God, and so on and so forth. Even some of the cosmic beings are like gods to us. And I think even Nehemiah goes even further in another lecture. He defines um, even our parents um, as aspects of God to us, as we grow or as you're young and grow. Okay, let's continue on. And I don't think we're going to get to the transcript today, but that's okay. We have plenty of time. Spirit, the power of creation. Spirit is the absolute, the Shiva in Sanskrit terminology. It is the all in all, and there is nothing outside of spirit because it is. Spirit is undefinable. It cannot be described. The material physical plane is less than a speck within the presence of spirit. Excuse me. The material world existence is hundredths of thousands of times less than a second in the scope of an existence of the spirit. Therefore, spirit is not within man. Spirit is the true man's real self. It is the I am, not the physical I am, but the infinite source that the soul came from and will eventually be absorbed back into. The omnipresence of the Spirit is all around us, not only within us, as I stated before, it is the background canvas of all life. Infinity is having no beginning and no end, because a divine law tells us that if there's a beginning, then there must be an end. The material world has a beginning, and therefore it will have an end. Therefore, spirit cannot be contained or touched, constrained. It is touched only brief experience in our state of existence. Spirit is infinite. There is no description of macro or microcosmic levels. It only serves to limit your perception of this subject. As I stated earlier in my other answer, that you must think in a framework of mind that allows you to think abstract, yet with metaphysical logic. And in the lecture, even in you'll see that this idea of metaphysical logic is touched on and expanded upon in the lecture. It is a way of, uh, I guess you could say, a way of right thinking. It's abstract in how we are taught to think in our limited conscious awareness, but it is a more holistic approach to, um, I guess you could say, to reality. To understand the spirit, we must understand that we can only grasp some faint concept of spirit or this small aspect of God, the Supreme Absolute. Spirit is a divine spark of God that has evolved as part, that has involved as part of itself, as a point of consciousness within man. This point of consciousness is the spirit of man's existence. Being in a state of unmanifested existence, it moves to manifest a part of itself as a point of consciousness, on the highest level of manifestation within creation, which is the soul. In the forward movement of this involution, the unmanifested part of the spirit splits apart of its divine consciousness and creates a body for itself, one part unmanifested, the other part manifested. The body of the spirit is recognized as the soul. As stated above, this soul is unmanifested and manifested just as the spirit, except for the spirit is never manifested, because it is that thing behind all manifestation. The God principle within man is the I am, that part of man's existence that made man in its own image, which is the soul, which is the I of man. Now, a point I want to stress here is that even though Mr. Davis brings all the teachings back to man and to our terrestrial existence, this applies across all of creation. Okay, everything has soul. Everything has spirit. Everything has soul. So when in the lecture, um, Mr. Davis brings up the point that a previous student had was under the misconception, and many people have the same misconception as well, that animals, plants, and minerals and things like that do not have a soul, and therefore it's okay for us to do whatever we want to them. They're different from humanity. Humans have souls, animals do not. But as you can see, um, clear here, everything has soul and is making its journey through evolution. The difference being the level of mind it operates upon, the level of vibration, where it falls within that framework of karma. So we'll get into that more when we go into um, the class. Where am I? How much more do we have? Okay, we'll stop at spirit, the resource of all life. The spirit is a part of the absolute, which is unmanifested because it is too vast and too pure to be touched or contained because it is all. So it creates a point of consciousness of itself as spirit that is unmanifested but is expressed through the soul that is unmanifested and manifested. The unmanifested part of the spirit and soul is untouchable, unseen, unheard, but it is the background and source of power for everything that is manifested. The manifested portion of the soul is far less than a fraction of the unmanifested existence. The spirit is that sacred flame within us and outside, and yet exists in neither place because it exists everywhere. It is the cause of our involution and the long journey of countless lives through evolution. The spirit was the first aspect of man's creation, which is the highest possible aspect of creation, and will be the last to appear in the so-called full consciousness. So aspect here is called principle in the 14 lessons. It must be understood that spirit is unmanifested or manifested has no need for consciousness because it is above this. In fact, it is the cause of consciousness. In fact, consciousness is part of the process of involution and the tool for man in evolution. It is said that God spoke the word, and the word was God, and creation was formed. The word was a sonic vibration released from the absolute God, which made its impression on the universal mind substance and all the pervasive cosmic energy, prana. The Word was God because God is all in all. Because God is all and all is God. For all things come from and is contained and maintained by God. It is said that the first word spoken could only be an expression that gives the name to the one life, the Absolute, God, and this word contained the expression of the will of God. For further expansion on this uh, idea here, um, it's touched upon in detail by Mr. Davis's first book, The Ancient Language of the Soul. So I'd highly recommend you pick up that book. It describes the science of mantra. Okay, so it is 2 o'clock now. How much more do I have? Oh, not much, but we'll pick up next session here. This is where I stopped. And then we'll move into the transcript. Let's see, do we have any questions here? We do have one question or comment. I guess, James, you're referring to when I mentioned that uh, our parents are aspects of God for us, specifically when we're young. And he says, honoring every father and mother isn't easy, though.
Honoring the laws that man have us to abide by isn't easy either. But we must do it. Our parents, in the mystic world, we are told that our parents are part of the earthly God structure that we must honor. And if you pay close attention to it, even after your parents die, you will hear them in your head. You will hear them speaking to you from either the past, present, or future. So, but you have to pay close attention because they're put in your life for a reason. And even when they give you instructions or give you advice, you may not know it until you may not understand that advice they're giving to you is advice for 30 years into the future or 50 years into the future. The only way you will know that if you pay close attention. And that's why that we also learn in the mystic world that a lot of times our parents are our parents for multiple lives, or they are family members for multiple lives because we did not pay attention, because we did not iron out the samskaras that we shared together. So, everybody come to your life for a reason. And you have to recognize that reason. It's a part of that intelligence I was talking to you about. If you know why, why you have something entering your life, or what's the mathematical term? If you solve A and B, you can find C.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that's how people enter our life. It's for a reason. And our parents is a key card of our life. Our siblings too.
So, are there any final questions or comments before we wrap up today's session? Sorry we didn't um, get to the transcript, but I really wanted to stress this subject of spirit and soul, because if we can begin to grasp and understand it, the I mean, it is the very first lesson in a series on the foundation of the mystic and yogic science. So if we can get this very first lesson, or at least begin to grasp it and wrap our heads around it, then the other concepts when we talk about soul, uh, the 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 mystic constitution, which is the aura, and then the final part of the class, which is part three, um, talks about the spiritual evolution process. We'll be able to gain much more um, from that study. What am I looking for? Oh, yeah, looking for the prayer to close out today's session. All right, so if there are no further comments or questions, let's close out today's session with reciting the New Lord's Prayer. And if you do have any questions or comments, by all means, they weren't able to get to it today, or if you're watching this, the recording of this at a later date, do feel free to send us an email with your questions and your comments, and we can respond to them appropriately. If you're okay with us answering them in a subsequent session, let us know in the email, and then we'll answer them in a subsequent session. Or if you prefer us respond privately in the email, we can do that as well. Or you can just come back in the next session and with your questions or comments. And do remember, there is assigned reading, there is homework, 14 lessons, and the Miracle Kit of Prayer, chapter 5 in the Miracle Kit of Prayer. Um, take the opportunity to review those texts along with the videos of class one. And then when we go through the transcript, um, you'll see that we engage in questions, or Mr. Davis engages in questions with the audience during all the classes that he does. But specifically, we're talking about the 21 lessons. So in class one, the questions are posed. Some questions are questionable and out there, but nevertheless, all questions are welcome. And if the material that is being covered in those classes um, inspires a question, feel free to bring that with you to these study sessions, or email it to us again, and we'll reply to them. Is there anything you want to add before we close out today, Nehemiah?
No, but send me the transcript.
Okay.
Bernard, you have anything to say? Send me that write-up too that we was looking at.
Okay. All right. Let us recite the New Lord's Prayer and close out today's class. The New Lord's Prayer. O divine and wondrous Spirit, O everlasting Lord of hosts, send forth now through me thy great and lasting power. Allow me, Almighty God, the lasting privilege of radiating to all the world thy great love, so that those who suffer may be given the power and energy to rise above their weaknesses. Almighty God, in great humility do I ask you to send forth your power, to give to me this great lasting privilege of being a channel, so that my suffering brothers may be helped and guided and healed and lifted into thy light, so that they who know not may look up, and in doing so receive through their higher selves your divine counsel. Almighty God, this day have you granted me a divine privilege. I ask you now to give to me the strength, so that never again will I turn from my inner vision of you. O great peace, great peace, great peace. In praise of your greatness, O God, doth my soul sing. Grant it energy to sing on forever and forever. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for your kind attendance and participation. Again, if you have any questions or comments, feel free to send us an email at Mystic Knowledge Center, all one word, at gmail.com. We can respond to those for you. If possible, do take the time to review the classes and the um, suggested reading or assigned reading in preparation for future sessions. And also, I didn't mention earlier, we went over the announcements for the stuff for the decided group, but we are currently in a spiritual push. So I would highly recommend, highly motivate, highly insist that for those of you, if you are able to attend a 12 Blessings service, either in person or online, if you're not able to attend in person, you could attend online. You can go to 12blessings.org. It is a website produced by the Aether Society, dedicated to the 12 Blessings service. And there, I believe they don't have daily services. Then they have regular services there that everyone can participate in. Let us utilize the energy made available to us during this current spiritual push. It is energy that is very much needed in the world at this time for healing, world peace, and the positive manipulation of the karma of humanity. So please, 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 if you are able, do participate in a 12 blessings service. If not daily, then at least once or twice a week. All right. Again, thank you very much for your attendance, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Take care.